Hi, my name is Rachel Elrod. I'm a JFK assassination researcher. Let's talk about the sewer shot because that's an important subject that I've never really talked to you guys about, but I think we need to address it because there is a contention that JFK was shot from the right side to his head, and there's a possibility then that it could have come from the sewer, which sits in the sidewalk in Dealey Plaza at ground level. So the idea of the sewer shot existing has come really from two places. And the first place is because there is a photograph taken moments after the assassination of a motorcycle cop getting off his motorbike and seemingly pointing downwards towards the opening of the sewer. And so people over the years have interpreted that action as him trying to communicate that something has occurred in that space. Okay. And in the 1960s, when Jim Garrison did his Clayshaw trial and preparing for that, this came into vogue, and there were questions asked about the sewer shot, and it's remained kind of on our radar ever since as a question that does need to be asked. And so obviously I'm going to try and unpack it a little bit so that we can understand it a bit better. But needless to say that Richard and I talked about this quite a lot, and we have debunked this idea. And I'm going to explain to you why we feel that it is not feasible. Okay, now I do not doubt that there was a person in that sewer. I think that that is a very high probability. Okay, and we certainly know that there's an account of a young guy called Jack Lawrence, who turned up at his place of work after the assassination, covered head to foot in mud, disgusting mess. I think he worked at a car dealership, rushes in an absolute frenzied panic and vomits in the toilets there. So there's an assumption there that this guy has been somewhere he shouldn't have been, at a place where a time when something huge has happened in the plaza, and it's not too far a stretch to join a couple of dots together. So I'll come back to that in a minute. But first of all, let's just talk about the feasibility of this shot. Okay, so the actual sewer opening shot, you'll know they're worldwide, aren't they? They're drainage slots in the sidewalk, in the curb, to drain the excess water away. That's the purpose of them. It's maybe this long and maybe 5 inches or so depth, like this. Okay, so we need to think about how feasible it would be to organise and set up a hit from there. That's a valid question. So think about this. If you are going to take a shot with a long barreled weapon, a long weapon like this, okay, we're going to be able to have to say that that weapon is positioned exactly correctly, okay, inside of the sewer to get the trajectory and the angles correct to be able to hit the target bang on. Only got one chance with this shot. So we have to come to the place of understanding that this long weapon, okay, and the guy that's shooting it is stood behind it and is able to position himself and the weapon in exactly the right angle for an effective shot in a very small enclosed space underground. Remember, he's going to have to be behind it to be able to pull the trigger and to actually look through the scope. How is that going to be possible? Oh, obviously, I don't know what the dimensions are of this sewage opening. Maybe it's only for the course of water to flow through it. So I imagine that this sewage opening is not going to be a very large opening inside. All right. Okay, so maybe it wasn't a long weapon. Maybe it was a handgun. Okay, but we still got the same issue, because to take an effective shot, the weapon has to be pointed exactly correctly, maybe upwards like this, with the shooter behind it with arms extended. And that person is going to have to be in that sewage opening stable to take a proper shot. So we would have to say, without doubt, how big that sewage opening was, okay, in terms of its depth. So it might be that it's a crawl space that you can crawl into, but how are you going to support yourself and make yourself stable enough to take an effective shot? It might not be a very tall space. When you're stood, you might have to crouch, and you might have to crouch anyway to get behind the gun. Is there enough space to do that? Or it might be that it's a complete open drop. So without some kind of support like a ladder, how is any shooter going to be able to balance effectively enough to even take that shot? So these are some of the questions I'm asking, because to be fair, it has to be an effective shot. This is a one-time shot, and the conspirators would have had to have had a risk versus benefit analysis done. In other words, when you're planning this kind of thing, you have to say, is this shot going to be so effective it's worth the risk of discovery, or worth the risk of doing it? And in my opinion, that is not the case with this particular angle of what went on here. Okay, I just feel that it wouldn't be a very easy shot to take. Furthermore, because you're going to have to get this angle completely correct now to hit a target in a car that's higher than street level, that car is going to have to be within a 3-inch margin of where you need it to be, because you've only got the 5-inch slot here, okay, of the opening of the sewer shot. So how much, you haven't got that much leverage, okay. The degrees of leverage dictate as to how far away and how high up the target has to be. So that means that the car would have had to be placed within a 3-inch margin with markers on the road, and it would have to have been lined up precisely. And JFK would have had to have been sitting in exactly the right location within the seat to make this even effective, for his head to have been even in the right vicinity of the place it needed to be in order to make this even feasible to start with. So we can see, when we start to put some of these things together and think them through, that it's really, the probability of taking a shot like this is highly unlikely, because the things you'd have to do to set it up would reveal that a shot was taken in this manner. Greer would have had to have steered that car into a marked off area on the road. Now, we know that there was a marked off area on the road, and there had been fresh paint put on there, because Beverly Oliver, who claims to be the babushka lady, has told us that there was fresh paint. She stood in it and it marked her shoes, and that was one of her proofs that she was there on that day. So I'm no doubt really that that there was fresh paint on there, but I believe that was to mark off the entrance and exit to the kill zone itself, and it wasn't a marker to position the car. That would have had to have marked off with, you know, wheel positions and 4 corners and all of those things to make that work. And we would have seen on the Zapruder film, and we would have had witness accounts as well that Greer stopped the car, he turned in, he slightly positioned himself, he backed up, and all of those things. And that's not what we see. That's not what our understanding is at all. In fact, the understanding is that Greer stopped the car and then sped off. There was no steering in and out. He would have had to, if he had done that, he would have had to steer out away, leftwards, back out into the road. And we don't see that. We see a straight stop and a straight moving off. So that leads me to believe that this sewer shot simply is not feasible and was not something that was done on the 22nd of November 1963. Furthermore, it doesn't fit the consistency, the pattern consistency doesn't fit, because in the other teams, we know from our research that there was teams in the TSBD and on the grassy knoll, and you know, they had clearly got a 3 to 4 person team on each of these occasions, because you need a shooter, you need a spotter, and you need radio comms. You need 3 people. It's a 3, and that's the way in which professional teams, hit teams, assassination teams, are set up. And sometimes some of them have a cleanup guy too, so you chuck the weapon to the cleanup guy, then the shooter walks off. So they're never walking away from the scene with the weapon in the hand. That responsibility goes to someone else, who then takes the weapon or dismantles the weapon or hides it or whatever they do, but then they leave the scene in an opposite direction. And the radio comms go. There's not room for all of this personnel in the sewage drain. There's just not. So that does not fit. And I just feel that it just seems to me inconceivable that it would even be a possibility. The noise from any sewer shot would have been, the recoil would have been very hard to handle for anybody down there. And it would have felt, I believe, like some kind of underground booming or a shaking. And we have no testimony to that whatsoever. Nobody's ever said it felt like something happened underground or there was a boom from underground. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it felt like it was coming from under my feet. There's no testimony of that whatsoever. So all of these things combined, when we look at it like this, my understanding has to be now, my conclusion has to be that this sewer shot simply did not occur. Okay, but like I said before, that does not rule out anybody being in that sewer. And I actually feel, although I can't prove this in any way, that Jack Lawrence was in that sewer. But I understand that it would have been for different purposes. So my speculation is that he was there taking some kind of audio recording. Now, technology was obviously not what it is today. In 1963, you couldn't just roll up with your mobile phone or your posh video camera and take audio and visual at the same time. These things were separate. So it stands to reason that if you're going to order a film, and they certainly did that with the Zapruder film, that was a film to order, that they would have wanted some kind of audio recording of it as well, if possible. Well, the only way you're going to be able to do that is very, very close to the scene. So I feel that Lawrence, most likely Lawrence, was in that sewer with some kind of recording device. And then you see you've got a record of every comment that's made in the car that machine picks up on, and all of the shots. And so you know, when you're a conspirator, you have all of the information, and knowledge is power, isn't it? So when they've got the audio and the visual, they know now what kinds of things to cover up, what kinds of things have been said, who said what, how many shots were actually fired, the order of everything. And it's information that is invaluable to conspirators when they're planning a cover up. And that is what I believe has occurred. And I just wanted to share that with us all, because it was a little bit of a loose end that I needed to clarify. Now, all of those things I have detailed in my book Endgame, so please go and get a copy of that from Amazon as an e-download, and our other books as well. So Richard and I wrote The Killer Queen in 2018, 2019, and we've jam-packed it full of information. This book tells you how the hit was done in the limo, okay, because Jackie wasn't the only shooter. I'm not saying that Jackie was the sole assassin. She wasn't, okay. This is a team effort, but she certainly did take a shot into the left side of JFK's head. So we haven't got any more paper copies, but all of these books are available as an e-download. So please go and get your 2022 updated edition, because this book will tell you exactly how we researched how it was done. And our book takedown saying this is now e-download only. Please go and get your 2022 updated edition. So it's lovely to talk to you, and we will talk soon. Bye.